Awesome.
And then as soon as I see my clock hit noon, which it just did, so I'll go live and same as last week, just I don't know, like 10, 15 seconds to let the attendees come in, and then you're good to go.
Awesome. Thank you.
Starting now.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. We're just going to go ahead and let people come in into the lunch and learn today. And I'll go ahead and kind of give it a couple minutes. And we have some people tuning in.
So yeah, that's fine. And I'm still again going to start.
All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and start now since it's 12:01. But all right, everyone. I hope everyone is having an amazing week. So far, we're still celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month. My name's Jesus. I'm your host for today, and I am part of the HR administration here at Swope Health. Starting off, I would like to add some facts from the Hispanic Heritage Month from the ones I said last week. I'm just gonna add some for today. And so one of the reasons why we also celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month is because we celebrate not only Mexico's Independence Day, but we also celebrate several Latin American countries. For example, we have Guatemala, we have Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, and Costa Rica. They celebrate theirs on September 15th, and then followed by Mexico September 16th, and then Chile on September 18th, and Belize on September 21st. But with that being said, today we also have a special guest. I'd like to welcome Teresa, who was born and raised in Kansas City, Missouri. She graduated from Raytown South High School, attended Park University, and graduated with her master's in public administration. She enlisted in the United States Navy, where she served 5 years active duty, and was awarded an honorable discharge upon completion on her enlistment. She received a National Defense Service Medal, Good Conduct Medal, Southwest Asia Service Medal, and several letters of recognition. She previously held office on the Jackson County Legislature for the 1st District at large during her time on the legislature, and she served as the 2014 vice chairman and was assigned to the following committees during her tenure with the county. She was assigned with budget, finance, audit, public works, land use, justice, and law enforcement. Garza was elected as the first Hispanic elected to the Raytown City Council in the April 2023 election, and is serving as serving until 2017. And so I would like to welcome Ms. Garza, and congratulations on being elected. I'd like to welcome Ms. Garza to our today's Lunch and Learn.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Good. Okay, so I would like to start off by, thanking you on behalf of myself and the Swope Health organization. And first and foremost, I would like to start off by kind of asking you about your background and your current position.
Yeah, absolutely. So my background, you kind of told a little bit about me in the introduction. And so I did, was born and raised here. I'm a 4th generation American. So my great grandparents were the first ones to come over into Texas. And then my grandfather made his way up to Kansas City with the railroads after World War II. And so that's how we ended up in Kansas City. So 3rd generation Kansas Cityan, 4th generation Mexican American. So that's part of my history. It's part of my culture and part of the way I was raised. So again, celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month is very near and dear to me, especially as I've gotten older and my abuelitos aren't here anymore. So carrying on those traditions and that culture is very vital to us, continuing to recognize and honor those that came before us.
Awesome. Good. Thank
Uh,
you for sharing.
Yeah. And I would say like my military service, because that came from both my grandparents, my grandfathers. Both of my grandfathers served in World War II, one in the Army, one in the Navy. And so coming out of high school, coming from a single parent household, trying to figure out what my future looked like, it just seemed like the right choice. And I joined the Navy following in my grandpa Dan's footsteps. And it was one of the best decisions I had made.
Good. Awesome. So so you kind of you answered the next following question. So it was what influenced you into, signing up to the military. So that kind of drove you to do that. But what sparked your interest in politics?
So coming out of the military, let's see, I served for 5 years. My last duty station was in Corpus Christi, Texas. And so I remained in Corpus for about 7 years after I got out of the military, started college there at a branch of Texas A&M. And then I ended up coming home and finished up my bachelor's degree at UMKC, and then went on and got my master's degree from Park. But it was during my time in my bachelor's degree program. I was working full time and then going to school. And so I was taking a Saturday class, and one of the ladies in my class was an older lady, and she was running for a state rep position out in Blue Springs area. And she got me to come and start helping to work on her campaign. And so I would go door to door and make phone calls for her and find yard sign locations. And that's really what kind of pulled me into the political arena, was from my working on Lana's state rep race. And that would have been back in like 2004 or 5. So around that time. And then it just kind of escalated from there, I guess, got involved with other campaigns and helping other people get elected. And then a seat came up on the Jackson County Legislature. It was an open seat, and I went and filed and ran my campaign and won that seat.
Nice. Awesome. Okay. So how did you get involved in public service?
Oh, I think a lot of that I think comes from my family, right? My familia, they're all about community. They're all about giving back. My abuelita Nympha worked for the Guadalupe Center for 22 years and handled their senior citizen programs. But like I said, both my grandfathers were in the military. They were also both union. My grandpa Dan was IBEW, which is the electricians union. He worked for Kansas City Power and Light for 32 years and was very active in his union, standing on picket lines for desegregation of crews and better benefits for minority workers. My grandpa Riley worked for Coca-Cola, was a Teamster, kind of the same thing. So I think just being around that type of environment where they were constantly pushing for everyone to have the same equitable space was part of my upbringing. And so I think it was just a natural progression from the time I was a child and seeing them being so active to eventually kind of taking up that torch and carrying it on.
Okay, great. Following up on that question, so how did you come to Spire Energy? So that's your current role, correct?
Complete accident. People ask me that all the time because I really had no background in the utility industry. When I was on the county legislature, I did have I was on public works and land use. So a little bit in the economic development realm. And I had been with a company that had gone bankrupt. And so they had laid off a bunch of people. And I was kind of in that area where I had been laid off, but they had given me a severance package. So I had a couple of months to try and figure out what I was going to do and where I was going to go. And I happened to be online one day paying my gas bill, and it said careers, and I clicked on it, and there was a position open with them for a manager of economic development. And so I went ahead and applied, and yeah, here I am almost 6 years later.
So what do you serve there? What's your
So
title?
I started out for the first 5 years that I was with them. I would handle economic development. Basically, what I would do is help recruit and attract new companies into Missouri that are not already here. So going out, meeting with those companies, seeing what we can do to try and get them here, what type of job creation they can create in the community, what type of capital dollars they would bring. And then we would help kind of recruit them, attract them. This is what Kansas City has to offer. This is what Missouri has to offer. This is a great place to raise your family, things like that. So Chewy out in Belton was like one of the projects that I worked on. Niagara Bottling Company, they started out with one location out towards the Belton area, and they now have 2 locations in the Kansas City metro area. Meta, the data center up north, was one of my projects. So getting those companies to just, be present in Missouri and have a actual proximity to us. And then in October of last year, I always joke that they volunteer promoted me to government affairs and community engagement. So I do a lot with on the local level, not state and federal, but I work with like public works. There's a lot of, I'm sure everybody on here has seen all of our trucks and stuff out replacing mains. So I try to help coordinate a better communication with the cities and stuff, so that we're not doing a project and then they come in and have another project and they have to tear up the roads, or we have to tear up the road. So we try to do our best to coordinate and work with the municipalities on those types of projects.
Wow. Sounds like a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, I cover the western half of the state. So it's not just Kansas City. I deal with everything from St. Joe all the way down past Joplin, and then over towards Jefferson City, Columbia area. So I have a large region that I cover.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So who have been your mentors to get where you are currently?
Yeah, I think obviously I've talked about my grandparents a lot and my mother. So those are huge influences in my life. Across the board. I mean, hands down, I couldn't have asked for a better family to give me great role models and to be able to bounce ideas and have unconditional support. But I've also been lucky to have a lot of other individuals that have helped me along the way that I could also bounce ideas off of throughout it, politically and professionally. Politic wise, when I was on the county legislature at my first term, I was the only female on there. And so I often got a lot of great words of wisdom and nuggets of information and ways to kind of maneuver through things from former Mayor Kay Barnes and from Claire McCaskill and former Senator Yvonne Wilson, all phenomenal, strong women who were very supportive and helpful. Also Cece Rojas was huge in helping me. I still bounce a lot of things or talk to her about stuff. I've also had a lot of great male mentors. Dan Tarwater and Scott Burnett, who were on the county legislature with me, were always helpful in helping me, kind of move through things and figure out the political or policy aspect of stuff. And so I was very lucky in that sense. And then I just have a really good tribe of women, friends that I can bounce ideas off of all the time. And I don't think I could do a lot without having that tribe.
Awesome. Did you run into any brick walls when, whenever you were running for legislature?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, especially when you're kind of new to the political realm and you're running for office, is a lot of times there are individuals that have been far more active in that space for a longer time period. And so those challenges, and I think that's with anything and everywhere you go, it's just how do you handle that and how do you move through that? And again, like I said, I had a lot of great people kind of helping me when I came up against those barriers. Another good one was Mr. Nutter, who's no longer around, but I would call him often and say, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. And he would help kind of give me a couple of different options of how to handle it or what to do. And I think that's key, is having those people that can help you kind of navigate that. Especially I ran, that first time, I was the first Latina, they'd had other Hispanics on the Jackson County Legislature, but I was the first female to hold a seat there. And so that also was another interesting dynamic of the situation. And just having people that could help me and guide me through all of that was extremely beneficial.
Wow, that's amazing. I can say that you had a big supporting system. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when I ran countywide, obviously with the last name Garza, you get into some of the other areas in Eastern Jackson County where you drive and they still have like Confederate flags hanging on, from their front porch. And so it was just an interesting dynamic. And like I said, I was just lucky to have people that could kind of help guide me through all of that. And I think while I was in office, our biggest focus was just constituent services, no matter what. And I think when I ran for my reelection, that was extremely beneficial, especially in the eastern part of our county, because we focused so much on constituent services that those individuals were more apt to be supportive and actually asked for yard signs and so forth.
Right. That's a great motivation for me as well. I mean, as a minority, just in general, that's great motivation. So my next question that I have for you is, what are some challenges that you faced while while joining Spire and the energy sector?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, like I had mentioned, is that I didn't come from a utility background. So I had the most I knew about natural gas was that, it warms my tortillas on the stove, right? I mean, that's the biggest thing. Other than that, I paid my bill and that was about the extent of it. So really learning the natural gas industry and everything that it takes and what it is for a system to actually work to get natural gas to a home or to a business was a complete learning curve. And I think I spent about my first year just going to a lot of trainings on basic natural gas information. Also learning how to convert, because again, working in the economic development space, we're looking at, if it's a manufacturing company, what type of load are they going to use? And a lot of times, especially if they're coming from overseas, they're using a different system of metrics, or they may be using BTUs, and we use here in the States, MCFs. So different metrics. And so learning how to convert them so that I understood what the actual need was also kind of a learning curve as well.
Awesome. So how does your day-to-day look like weekly? Not day-to-day, but weekly.
Yeah, it's never the same. And every day is different, but it's a lot of meetings, a lot of conversations, a lot of kind of maneuvering through. So I also deal with if you're an elected official, I also deal with, like, let's say somebody calls me and complains about it could be anything from there's a pothole in the front of their house because we're in there repairing a main, but they call the elected official, right? So then I'm dealing with the elected official to help answer the constituents' concerns. Maybe it's that they came in and maybe that they had their gas turned off but they're current on their bill and there was some misstep or something that was mixed up, and so navigating through that. So I handle a wide range of issues in addition to dealing with the various municipalities in my region when it comes to our construction projects. I also handle a lot of anything and everything that's related to most of the chambers within my region. I'm the point of contact for those chambers. So I think I have something like 53 chambers that I deal with throughout my region. So it just depends. It varies, but it's a lot of meetings, and a lot of traveling, because I do have a large region that I cover.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that, obviously. And so my next question would be, what advice do you have? Um, what advice do you give to those who want to be a leader in an organization or be where you want to be?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things is just kind of having conversations with those individuals that are higher up. I mean, I constantly am having conversations with like my vice president and my president of where I want to go and what does that look like and what are the steps that I need to do to get there. When I came in, I started out as a manager. I'm now a regional manager. And so a lot of the training and the things that need to occur, but you can have those conversations with your, either your boss or maybe if you don't feel comfortable having them directly with your boss, having them with somebody that is over another department, but that is equivalent to your boss. But having those conversations on what are the steps I need to take to get where I want to go and what does that look like? What does the path look like? And then there's always external training that you can take. When I first came on board, like I said, I was economic development. So I did go through an economic development intensive certification program through Oklahoma University so that I had a better understanding and well-rounded view of what economic development is and how the utility industry plays a role in that. But I think those are the things that people need to look to. And there's a lot of options out there that offer free courses, right? If you want to increase your knowledge on something or a leadership, skill set that you're looking for. LinkedIn provides them. There's a couple of other websites that provide free training. So those are great ways to also develop those skills and kind of help prepare you for whatever that next step is.
Great. Being a Hispanic leader, how do you feel, being a Hispanic leader overall in the Missouri community?
Yeah, I think across the board, I think that Black and Brown in general, it's so important for us to be at the table and to have that seat. And I think that when we work together, Black and Brown communities, when we work together, then we are stronger. Our numbers are stronger. And we deal with a lot of some of the same issues, disparities in healthcare, food deserts, housing issues. So a lot of that stuff, I think that it's just extremely important to ensure that we are at the table versus on the menu. And if you don't have like the desire to run for office or to be in that type of front facing position, then you can always help other people that do. And just being supportive and being very strategic in the way in which we move one another forward is extremely critical.
Great. That was very powerful. Thank you again.
Well, I would say, like, I find a lot of times, like, people will come and ask me to be on boards, and sometimes I don't have the capacity. And I understand a lot of times they're looking for like a Black or Brown person to be on a board. And so what I found is that it's extremely important that if I don't have the capacity, that I am recommending somebody who is, Black and Brown. And say, like, I don't have the capacity right now, but here's a list of people that I think would be great for your particular organization. And I think that is extremely also critical. And that's how we get people at the table, is that we make sure that if we don't have that capacity, we're providing them with other individuals that would maybe be a good fit. And I try to do that. And I've shared that with other people, and I've learned that, some of them now do the same thing, because that's how we get, each other at the table, and that's how we can work together and move things forward.
We're stronger together, just like you said. So that was my final question. However, I do have a last question. It's a fun question. So the fun question would be, what is your favorite music group?
Ooh, my favorite music group. I don't really have one because I listen to everything. My music taste is eclectic. The only thing I really don't listen to is probably heavy metal. But otherwise, everything else, I listen to everything from Carol G to Kane Brown, which is country, so it's like a wide range of music that I listen to. It just depends on kind of my mood and who I want to listen to. I just saw Beyonce this last weekend. So yeah, it just depends.
I heard a lot of Swope employees were there as well.
It was a great concert.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing, all of your answers. And then obviously, I I am going to ask the audience if they have any remarks, any questions. There is a group, there is a chat at the bottom to see if anyone has any questions. So we have a Q&A, and then we also have the regular chat if anyone has any questions for Ms. Garza.
They're gonna let me off easy.
Mr. Mark Miller, you have your hand up.
Oh, the chat is disabled, so they can't type in it.
Yeah, chat is disabled. There we
What
go.
was
We
one of
have
my
one.
defining moments? Okay. One of my defining moments. So one of, I would say, defining moments and one of my biggest successes was that when I first ran for office, we had heard a lot from like minority owned businesses on how difficult it was to do work with the county, and that they constantly ran into struggles, especially if they were a smaller business. A lot of times the county just assumed they didn't have the capacity or the capability to carry out large orders and so forth. And so we had worked really hard. And when I say we, myself and Bishop Tyndall at the time was on there with me. We had started the last year of my first term on trying to get an MBE, WBE ordinance passed at the county level. And we definitely did not think that it was going to be that difficult, but it turned into almost a 4.5-year process just to get an MBE, WBE ordinance passed at the county, and then to actually get it implemented and the infrastructure in place for it to actually exist and work. And I think that was one of the most defining moments, is just realizing how long it was going to take, and that there were going to be people against something that just seemed to make common sense, especially when we want to try and build up our minority businesses and our small businesses. And so Bishop and I just sitting in his office a couple of times trying to figure out, do we have public hearings? What does that look like? How do we convince our colleagues that were against this to want to be a part of those public hearings? And so just the strategy and the learning that I achieved during that entire process as an individual and as a policy person, and then also the relationship that I built with Bishop Tyndall was one of my most defining moments, I think.
Good. We do have another question by Duran. He said his question is, what's next for you in terms of advocacy?
Ooh, I don't know. I think at some point, and I've said this before, at some point you get tired of kind of being the first, right? And so it's nice to see individuals stepping up. Duran, I mean, I've known Duran since he was in college. And so to see him in this leadership role, it means a lot to me. The same with his colleague, Manny, and then Crispin Ray on the city council. So I think, I think being a leader is making sure that you are building up and grooming other individuals younger than you to step into these roles, because I don't want to be doing this forever, right? I don't want to be always in this role. And so I think that's part of it, is just that continuation of developing and building up younger people to step into these leadership roles is extremely relevant, and probably more of the role that I want to do when it comes to that advocacy component.
Great. Awesome.
Let's see, Mark has a question in the chat. It says, how do you build stronger ties between companies like Swope and the Latino community? I think that's a great question. And I think it's one of the questions that everybody has constantly. I know I've had this conversation with numerous groups of how do we build a stronger relationship between Black and Brown, the Black and Brown community, Black and Brown organizations, and what does that look like? And I think it centers around, again, creating the structure for what our future is going to look like versus focusing on what it has been. And what I mean by that is that the dynamics of our geography in Kansas City are shifting and changing, and they will continue to do so. And that's why we have to set it up for the future, right? We have to ensure that we are having people at the table that need to be at the table, that we're having those difficult conversations that are often uncomfortable and we don't want to often have, because that's the only way we can move things forward. And so that takes it takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of strategy, and it also requires us to be very like focused. And so I think sometimes that's the difficult work, especially, and again, this is part of advocacy work, right? Because advocacy work it has to be very intentional. And so I think that's part of those conversations is, what does it look like, and how do we shape that? One of the things that I do for Spire is look at that. That's part of my community engagement piece, is how do we as a company show up in the communities that we're serving, and what does that showing up look like? And so we're trying to be very strategic in that aspect of how we show up in our communities and the entities that we are aligning with. I think that's key. But it's starting the conversation also. We have to start the conversation.
Great answer. And great question as well. First, I mean, last but not least, I'd love to thank you. You should definitely come visit us sometime to our headquarters. I'm sure you've heard about us here at our central location. Obviously, we have 11 different locations. But we just opened up our PACE program, so we'd love to see you here for sure.
Okay.
Obviously, thank you, and I'd like to thank everyone as well for their questions as well.
Well, I appreciate you having me on today, and I appreciate the questions and the conversations. And yeah, I'm always willing to have coffee. If anybody wants to reach out, I'm happy to have coffee with people. So feel free to do so, and we can set that up. And then I will take you up, Jesus, on that. I'm coming to visit the facility and see. It's been a while since I've been there, so I would love to do that.
Good. That's exciting to hear. Unless anyone else has any questions, I think we should be good to go. All right, I think we should be good.
All right. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Theresa.